Hey everyone! In this video I'm going to show you how to design efficiently using Adobe Illustrator. If you're an upper level student, then hopefully you're getting better at creating good illustrations in Illustrator. The difference between a professional illustrator and a good illustrator then is perhaps being able to work efficiently. And I'm going to show you some tricks for being able to do that. This is a complete example from a potential client, and I'm going to show you how we create this in layers so that we can efficiently reuse it in the future. So let's take a look at some techniques. I'm first going to just hide all of the layers and start from the bottom and just show you how this was built. So from the base layer, I start by creating a base layer, and I create a base layer that is not white so that I can tell when I'm looking at the base layer. I then lock that base layer so that I can not be modifying it as I work. But I know that whenever I see this color, then I'm seeing through to the base layer. Now, in this design, we might start by creating some graphics. So here I've created a graphic of what looks to be like a vacuum cleaner. And that graphic can be placed anywhere. So I've grouped items so that they can be used together. And notice that I haven't worried about the cropping of this object yet. I've just created something that I might reuse in other places. I have several of these, and they're essentially just like, single image graphics that depict something. They've been broken up into parts that can be reused elsewhere. So, for example, this part, I've grouped it so that I can place it in another frame and use it in another frame. That reusing is obviously something that makes you more efficient. But the main thing I want to focus on is that in professional projects, you often want to do something more advanced, like say clip this to a frame. So I have these frames, and maybe I want to set this inside of an environment or inside a frame so that it works with the rest of the design. There are a few ways to do this, and I'm going to show you a more efficient way, as well as the not great way to do it that seems obvious. So the obvious way to do this, it would seem, is to just clip these shapes to each other. So I have this shape that I want to use, and I want to clip this object. So this is the obvious way, and there are some times when you need to use it. So what you can do is, what I would do is, I'm going to unlock the green frames. I'm going to take a frame here, I'm going to make a copy of it, and take this copy and move it to the layer that I'm going to be clipping. So I will go to Arrange, send to the current layer, and I've switched to the layer 4. And then I'm going to lock and hide the green frame layer. So now I have this layer that I can use for clipping. So the typical clipping process is as follows. I take the frame object, I get this object out of the way first. I need to group all of these, so I go to right click and I do group. Now these are treated as a single object, right? I then bring my frame back, and now I select the two objects, this one that's grouped and the frame, and I go to Object, Clip Mask, Make. That will create a mask. Now it's not correct because I need to move that one side down, so I'm going to grab the Adjust tool and move this edge down. I'm also going to close it just to make it clearer what's happening here. And that will allow me to make this line straight. So I'm going to move this up a little bit. And I'm going to move this down so that it clips more completely. Now I select this, and I select this object, and I'm going to right click and then do Object, Clip Mask, Make. And that creates a mask. If I turn on the green frames now, this object will fit fairly nicely inside of here. I know I need to adjust it a little bit, but it'll fit nice inside here. That is one way to do clipping. It's somewhat inefficient way to do it because I need to redo that for every frame. So on each frame, I need to make a copy of the frame, move it to the layer I'm going to clip, and then create the clip mask on each layer. And this can get quite tedious. So I'm going to show you a more efficient and fast way to do this. So I don't want you to do that technique I just showed you, but you might use it in other contexts. It's still important to know how to do it. I'm going to show you a faster way to do this. And first I'm going to release that clip mask that I created just by doing Object Clip Mask Release. And now I'm back to just the complete object. An easier way to do this, or a faster way to do this, is to actually create a separate masking layer, which I've done here. That masking layer is essentially your background, but with windows cut out into it. So we can see that essentially it achieves the same thing. It gives me a masked region, but it's essentially done using a layer rather than using a clip mask. So this is actually, the nice thing about this is that it's a part of a separate layer, so I can use it for all four of them, and I don't have to apply it to each frame. You can see that it acts kind of like a window pane. It lets you see through the frame, see through the clip mask to the background and reveal whatever is hidden there, right? So if I put it back where it's supposed to be, it essentially recreates the background, but with these holes that let me see through. So that means that in order to do the other three, I don't have to recreate a clip mask. All I need to do is reveal them. If I just turn these other frame layers back on, they're automatically clipped because they're fitting inside of this window, this kind of window frame mask layer. And you can see that even though they have edges that bleed out, and I have to be careful that it can't bleed out too far because then they would be visible in the other regions. But they can still bleed out a little bit and be somewhat rough, and the white masking layer will mask them off and give me the what I would like to see. You just need to have this masking layer and make sure that it's locked and available, and then you insert the frames on the intermediate layer, on the layers behind it, right? So I can move this around between the masking layer and the base layer. So I can move around this layer as a unit, and I can even do something very simple like invert the position of these, change which frame they appear in, just by moving them, and they're automatically clipped. Now I might need to adjust my pictures a bit, but I don't need to redo the clip mask. There are no clip masks for these. It's all present in the white masking layer. I'm going to go back to where it was. Okay. So the rest of the design is actually then fairly easy to create. Anytime I want to work on a frame, I just put that frame into where I've labeled off as the editable layers. And you're welcome to create your own editable layers in here. And that will be the frames that represent these four frames that are automatically clipped by the white masking layer. The other layers that are locked here are ones that you should not change. They would not change because they are part of the overall design. And that is the green frames now can be just overlaid around that. And it includes the border areas both inside and outside so that we have these kind of easy to use frames. They're all present in a layer that is locked. The titles, the top logos, and the areas for the banner are at the top as well, but no text yet because each of these may differ. So part of the efficiency here is creating a design that can be reused for multiple designs without having to modify the locked layers. The center image is clipped using a mask, so this part does have to be clipped to a circle. And then I've created a set of icons that represent the tools that you might use here. And they were designed to, the efficiency here is that we create several spaces that can expand, that we can add to or remove from if we want. So if some projects have more tools, you can add them as icons. And if there are fewer tools, like in this one, then we can just remove them. But we have the spaces for them. So it's pretty obvious where additional tools will go. And finally, the foreground text fills in the title and the numbers and the names of the frames. So we do that as a last layer because the text is going to appear over everything else. And that is also editable because if you have a different design or a different part of the project, that is if you're working on a different one for your group, then you can change the name of that to whatever it needs to be. So that's basically it. I just wanted to give you kind of a quick rundown of how this template works and the efficiencies that are built into this template. Part of the professional design of this template is that I've created a difference between what are locked layers and what are editable layers, and I labeled them as editable. This is so that when someone else, a designer working with you or under you, looks at this, they can know that this is where they would need to modify. And the masking layer, which is harder to create, the frame layer, which was harder to create and takes time, those are all done for you, but they are locked, and so you don't need to modify them. You can just come into here. So if we look at what this looks like without the editable layers, it looks essentially like a blank template for this project. If I drop in a completed frame, then it fills in this space and is automatically clipped. If I drop in frame 2, it fills in that space and is automatically clipped by the white masking layer. Frame 3 will be clipped and automatically filled in, and then frame 4. The center is slightly different. I do have to create a clipping mask for a circle here, but that's fairly easy to do. And then I just fill in the other layers. So the list of tools is here, and you can copy and reuse those, maybe from other places. And the foreground text appears here. So the main problem now is simply a matter of designing those frames. The text you can easily fill in, but now the challenge really reduces to how do I communicate what I want to communicate in these frames? And that's primarily your challenge. You don't have to worry about fitting into a design or doing a lot of the clipping. It just comes down to creating good graphics. So that's it. So hope you find this helpful, and let me know if you have any questions. Talk to you again soon.